There is an old warning passed down through forests across America. If someone calls your name at night, do not answer, especially if the voice comes from deep inside the woods. People said it could imitate human voices, the voice of a friend, a family member, even your own voice. And some claimed they followed that voice into the darkness and never came back. At first, it sounded like nothing more than an old campfire story, a warning meant to scare children, a tale told to stop people from wandering into the woods at night. But over time, people began noticing strange similarities. The locations where people vanished, dark mountain roads, lonely highways with no lights, and abandoned railroad bridges hidden deep in the forest. Places where witnesses repeatedly claimed to see the same disturbing figure, something that stood like a human but looked horribly twisted in ways no human body should. A shadow with the head of a beast, silently watching people from the darkness. Eventually, people began calling it the Goatman. And the strange part was this. People from completely different parts of the country started describing nearly identical encounters. Some claim they saw a figure following behind their cars. Others said they noticed glowing eyes staring at them from the trees. And some swore they made eye contact with something standing beneath an abandoned bridge. After that night, they never returned to that road again. The legend of the Goatman exists in many different forms across the United States. Oddly enough, the details are always similar. An isolated road, a dark forest at midnight, and an old bridge with rusted railings disappearing into the darkness. One of the most famous versions of the legend began in Maryland. For decades, people claimed they saw something strange wandering near remote back roads. At first, they thought it was a deer, but the closer it came, the more wrong it looked. The creature stood upright like a human, but its body appeared twisted in unnatural ways, and its head looked disturbingly similar to a goat. One witness claimed it stood silently between the trees, watching him from the darkness. Another person said the creature was carrying something that looked like an old axe. The rusted blade briefly reflected the moonlight, and the moment they saw it, they ran. But the strangest part was this. Most witnesses described the exact same behavior. It never attacked. It never screamed. It simply stood there, watching people from a distance, as if it was waiting for someone. And somehow, that silence made the stories even more disturbing. Over time, people stopped calling the place by its real name. Instead, they began calling it Goatman's Bridge, a location where the monster itself became more famous than the road. And even today, some locals warn people never to cross that bridge alone at night. Whenever people described the Goatman, they always said something strange. It looked human, but it never truly felt human. The way it moved was not animal-like. If anything, it moved too naturally, and that made it even more unsettling. From a distance, some witnesses thought it looked like a tall man standing near the trees. But as they got closer, the details became horrifying. A long, distorted snout, animal-like eyes, and horns rising from the top of its head. Some witnesses even claimed the creature carried a terrible smell, wet fur, rotting soil, and the scent of an old livestock barn. But others said something even stranger. The creature was almost completely silent, as if it did not fully belong in the real world. Some claimed they never even heard footsteps. Then the rumors became even darker. People began connecting the legend to a real location in Maryland, the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. According to the story, a scientist there had secretly conducted genetic experiments involving both humans and animals. And somehow, something went horribly wrong. Some believed the Goatman was the result of that failed experiment. Of course, none of it was ever officially confirmed. From that moment on, once people heard the story, the sightings no longer felt like ordinary monster tales. They began to feel disturbingly possible, as if the creature was not supernatural at all, but something humans accidentally created. And that idea made the legend far more terrifying. In Goatman legends, certain places appear again and again. Abandoned railroad bridges, dark train tracks with no lights, and long stretches of silence where nobody should be standing. One of the most famous stories came from Kentucky, a place connected to another terrifying legend, the Pope Lick Monster. Over time, many people began believing it was simply another version of the Goatman. The story began near an old railroad bridge. People claimed that late at night something appeared beneath the tracks, and anyone who saw it felt a kind of fear they could never properly explain. One night, a group of teenagers went there as a joke. At first, it was only meant to be a dumb challenge. They laughed, told ghost stories, and tried scaring each other. Then suddenly, one of them stopped talking. He pointed into the darkness beneath the bridge. At first, they thought it was only a shadow. But then it moved, slowly. The figure stood there, its body twisted into an unnatural shape. And a moment later, as a distant train light passed across the bridge, two glowing eyes briefly appeared in the darkness. The group panicked, but what disturbed them most was that the creature never charged at them. It never screamed. It simply stood beneath the bridge, watching them. One witness later said, "It would have been less terrifying if it attacked, because the creature looked as though it had always belonged there, perfectly still, perfectly at home inside the darkness." Then a few seconds later, the figure slowly disappeared beneath the tracks, vanishing into the shadows. But the truly disturbing part came afterward. Some people who crossed that bridge later claimed they constantly felt like something was following them. While driving, while walking home at night, even while staring out a window. Sometimes they would briefly notice a tall shadow standing near the road. And when they looked again, nothing was there. Yet somehow the feeling of being watched never completely disappeared. One of the most terrifying parts of the Goatman legend involves stories of people being followed on isolated roads. According to witnesses, the creature did not chase people like an animal. It followed them, quietly, patiently. One couple claimed they were driving through a narrow mountain road late at night, surrounded by trees on both sides. At first, they noticed what looked like a shadow standing beside the road. They assumed it was a deer, but as the headlights moved closer, the shape began looking horribly wrong. The figure stood upright like a person, but its proportions made no sense. Its shoulders were unnaturally narrow. Its head stretched forward like the head of an animal. The driver panicked and accelerated. But a few seconds later, his girlfriend turned around and screamed. The thing was still there, moving silently beside the forest, keeping pace with the car. But it was not running like a human, and it was not sprinting on four legs like an animal. Instead, it moved with impossibly long strides, gliding silently between the trees. And the strangest part was this. No matter how fast the car moved, the shadow never seemed very far behind. Eventually, the couple reached a brighter road near town, and at that exact moment, the creature disappeared. But according to them, the fear did not end there. Because for several more seconds, a dark shape still remained visible in the rearview mirror. After that night, both of them said the same thing. The creature was not simply chasing them. It felt as though it already knew exactly when to stop, and ever since then, they claimed even the smell of wet forest air made them anxious. There is another warning that appears repeatedly in Goatman's stories. Never say its name out loud in the woods at night. People claimed the creature appeared when people searched for it, especially if someone repeated its name as a joke. According to the stories, that was when strange things began happening. Some people said the forest suddenly became silent. No insects, no wind, nothing. And then, from somewhere deep between the trees, they heard movement, slow dragging sounds, strange footsteps pressing into wet soil. And some claimed they heard their own names being called. At first, they thought it was a friend, but something felt horribly wrong. The voice sounded far away, yet somehow it also sounded like it was whispering directly beside them. That was when people began believing the Goatman was not simply a monster, but something capable of luring people deeper into the darkness. And the warnings never stopped. If you hear a voice calling your name in the woods, do not follow it, especially if you are alone. And whatever happens, do not turn around. Because according to the legend, the most terrifying moment is not when you first see the creature. It is realizing it may have been watching you the entire time. The reason the Goatman legend never faded away was because of the disappearances. For decades, people told stories about individuals vanishing near remote campsites and deep forest trails. Officially, most of the cases were explained away. Police blamed accidents, people getting lost, animal attacks. But strangely, many of the stories shared disturbing similarities. Most of the missing people had been near the edge of the woods late at night, and many of them were last seen near isolated camping areas far from civilization. One particular case became infamous among locals. A man had gone camping with friends deep in the mountains. Late that night, he walked alone into the darkness surrounding the campsite. At first, his friends assumed he was joking around, but minutes passed and he never came back. Eventually, they began shouting his name into the woods. Then suddenly, they heard his voice. "Over here." It sounded distant, weak, but something felt wrong. The direction of the voice kept changing. One moment it came from the left. Then seconds later, it sounded like it was behind them. That was when panic began spreading through the group. And then, between the trees, they saw something moving. A horribly twisted figure, a long animal-like head, an unnaturally thin body, and a silhouette moving as though its joints bent the wrong way. The group ran immediately. The next morning, the missing man was gone. Search teams spent days looking through the forest, but no trace of him was ever found. According to local rumors, something strange was discovered near the area where he disappeared. Deep marks pressed into the ground, not human footprints, not animal tracks, something else. But officially, nothing was ever recorded, and over time, the story slowly became part of the legend itself. Even today, some people claim there is still something living near those old campsites, something that was never fully explained. Even today, new stories continue appearing online. People claiming they saw strange figures in the woods. Others saying something followed behind their cars at night. And some insisting they saw a massive shape standing silently beside the road where nobody should have been. Most of the evidence is unclear: blurry photos, short videos, or stories too strange to easily believe. But oddly enough, many witnesses describe the same feeling. It felt like reality stopped making sense. One man claimed he experienced something terrifying while driving along a lonely highway in Texas late at night. According to him, the road was completely silent. No wind, no animals, nothing. Then suddenly, the moon disappeared behind thick clouds. For a brief moment, everything around him went completely dark, and that was when he saw it, standing beside the road. At first, he thought it was a tree, but then the figure slowly turned its head toward him. The man immediately accelerated, but seconds later, he glanced into the rearview mirror, and the shape was still there, closer than before. According to him, the car was moving close to 100 kilometers per hour, yet somehow the figure kept getting closer. Eventually, he reached the lights of a nearby town, and the figure vanished. But even now, he claims there is one thing he can never forget. It was not the creature's appearance that terrified him most. It was the silence, the fact that the thing never made a single sound. And according to him, that silence felt far more unnatural than any scream ever could. He later admitted that ever since that night, he has never been able to look into a rearview mirror for too long while driving alone at night. Even now, people in certain parts of America still repeat the same warning. Do not wander near isolated mountain roads at night, and never call out the Goatman's name as a joke. Some believe it is nothing more than an old urban legend, a story shaped by fear, rumors, and imagination. But others are not so sure, because according to witnesses, there is something deeply wrong about the feeling these encounters leave behind. Not simple fear, something worse. The feeling that you were being watched long before you noticed anything there at all, and deep in the woods where the darkness becomes completely silent, people sometimes still claim they hear strange footsteps moving nearby. Slowly, carefully, as if something is standing just beyond the trees, something that looks almost human, but not completely. A distorted figure wandering somewhere along the edge of the darkness, and a creature whose name, according to the legend, should never be spoken out loud. The Goatman. And perhaps the most terrifying possibility is this. Maybe the voice calling your name from the darkness already knew who you were long before you heard it. If this story left you wondering, the next one is waiting for you. Subscribe and stay with us.